Hello, welcome back to HunterTuned. Today we are going to be working on the engine for the purple car. I got the crankshaft back last night from the machine shop and I finally get to assemble it. It's going to work this time, finally. It's been a couple months in the making of trying to get this engine together and working with all the hybrid parts that I'm using. If you guys have been following for a while, you know that I have this LS block right here, B18B, and I am using a B16 piston, I'm using a CTR piston and a B16 connecting rod on an LS crankshaft. The only way you can make this work is if you grind the counterweights on the crankshaft. I took this crankshaft, this is an LS crank, I took it to the machine shop, and this crank is a little bit decked out because it's got it's freshly polished, obviously, and it has the chamfers on all the oiling holes, which will help with RPM and help with better lubrication. Ever since I started doing the chamfering on the oil holes, I haven't had any bearing failures to speak of. But anyways, when you use that B16 rod and piston combo with the LS crankshaft, the piston actually hits the crank. Because the rod is so short, it pulls it down too far and ends up hitting the crankshaft. So that's why we had to grind the counterweights on the crank. So I took this to my machine shop guy. He grinded it very nicely, double checked the balance and everything like that, and rebalanced the crank. So this thing is all set to go. Hopefully this all works out. I don't really know of anybody doing this on a B series, but I really think this is going to be a really, hopefully, reliable high horsepower setup that can rev efficiently and not, cause a whole lot of harmonics in the motor. So you guys know with like an LS rod or like any LS style motor, over a certain RPM, they start to get a lot of harmonics in the motor, and you'll kill oil pumps, revving it over 9,000 and stuff like that. Where this setup, I'm hoping with a good pump, and I'm gonna get a dampener for it eventually when I really start to push it. But we're just trying to see what the limitation is of those cast pistons. So I got the CTR Nippon Racing pistons, and we're just gonna see how far we can push these pistons in this block. This block is also filled with the Chris Boyette block filler. It's kind of similar to DevCon, but is a little bit better, I believe, from what a lot of guys are saying. It's a little bit better quality stuff than DevCon, and it's blue in color, obviously. And these cylinders are filled just above the water pump line, so we can still have good flow through the cooling system, and then it's all drilled for the head gasket, obviously, so no overheating causes ever happen. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to actually get the crank installed into the motor, and I am going to get the main caps bolted down. I already did this once before, and then realized when I got it all together that the piston was hitting the crank. So now I'm just going to redo that whole process once more. Put the crank in. I already got assembly lube on all the bearings. We're just going to chuck the crank in, and then the caps will redo the lube and assembly lube on all the caps again. And then once the crank is in, we'll get it all torqued down and then start putting rods and pistons in one at a time. Alrighty guys, so we got 3 of the rods and pistons and the crank installed into the block here. I'm just putting some gear lube on the cylinders just so the rings don't scratch up the cylinders at all. I'm just putting a little bit of, coating the cylinders with just a little bit of, gear lube, 80-90. So I'm getting all those installed, and I actually got the crank installed, obviously, and torqued down the main caps. So I got all of this bottom side stuff done already. I torqued all the caps here. One thing I did want to point out to you guys is when I torque stuff, I torque it you get it nice and snug on the first pass, and then the second pass you go to the spec. At least that's what I do. Or tight with a ratchet, and then grab the torque wrench to do the final pass. And when you go to do the final torque pass on the bolt, you want to make sure that it clicks mid-stride, like mid-revolution, not like you don't want to stop and then start again, because then your torque reading is going to be inaccurate. But that's what I do. I just use this frickin' Harbor Freight $20 torque wrench. I've put together so many motors with this torque wrench right here, and seems to work okay, so that's what I'm doing. This is totally a budget style build, guys. I don't have a whole lot of money into this, just a lot of time, research and development, stuff like that into this thing. But if you guys don't know, we are using a eBay connecting rod on this thing. This connecting rod is an H-beam rod with ARP bolts. The bolts that came with these connecting rods were actually like super cheesy Chinesium fucking bolts. And the ad on the eBay listing said these rods were only rated to 7,000 RPM. So I think the real rating is because, or they were, you know, rated that way because the bolts are so cheesy, guys. Like, I literally could probably take a side cutter to the fucking bolts. These are the bolts that came with those connecting rods. They appear to be an ARP style bolt, but just putting the socket on and off of them a few times, the points, like where the 12-point socket would sit on the bolt, are all like rounded down just from putting the socket on and off. So I think that was really the main weakness with these rods. But these rods were $120, $120 shipped to my door. And all I did was replace the bolts with ARPs. So I'm hoping that works out. We're just gonna try it. This is literally an experiment motor. We're doing everything the wrong way on this, just to see how it's gonna work out. If it's gonna work, and I actually have faith in it. I think it's gonna hold up, and I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this engine and go pretty fast with it. So yeah, cast piston, stock sleeve, $120 connecting rod, $40 engine bearings. I use the aluminized bearings from King. I do not use the race style bearings. At least I don't like to use the race style, because the race style bearings are good, don't get me wrong, but they don't take a lot of like abuse. A softer type of bearing, like a softer rod bearing or a softer main bearing, will actually take more like punch to it. It'll take more like it'll take more rattle force than a, you know, race bearing. A race bearing is a very hard compound style bearing, and all they do is they either break or they flake right away. Where these ones, they, you know, seem to hold their character very well. I have the same aluminum style bearings in my Mustang, and I spin this stock bottom N48 7,500 every time I race it. And like I said, it's got those aluminized style bearings in it, and I really do think they work well. At least whenever I build an engine, I prefer to use the aluminum style bearings, aluminized, whatever you want to call it. So anyways, CTR pistons from Nippon, they look really good, and we're just going to throw this thing back together. One other thing is, when I was putting this thing together, I put the center two pistons and rods in, and they still hit the damn crank. I went to the machinist guy. He said he ground them all, which he did grind them all, but he checked the front and back cylinders. He did not check the center two, and the center two were hitting by probably a half a thou. Like, it was just barely dusting the crank. So I just took a little sandpaper to the crank here to just get that extra thousandths or 2,000ths I needed for clearance. And now this thing spins over great. It spins over like butter. And now I'm just putting the last rod and piston in, and then I'm going to get to putting like the oil pan and stuff like that on it. I'm not waiting any longer to put this damn thing together. I'm not taking it back to the machine shop. I've literally waited 6 months to put this motor together. So I'm just doing it. I'm going to send it. If this works, it works. Cool. If it doesn't, I'm going to learn a lot. I'm already learning a lot trying to like hybrid parts together in this thing. So yeah, hopefully you guys are going to learn something too. And if we explode it, we can all laugh about it and throw a different block in and try to do better next time. Alrighty guys, so I got the bottom end all assembled. Everything spins very nicely. Nothing is hitting anymore. And the pistons are coming pretty much all the way to the top of the deck. I think there's like 5 thousandths where they sit below the deck, but it is perfect for what I kind of wanted with this setup. Like I said, this is kind of just like parts I have laying around, just trying to make something work so we can get a motor running for the purple car. That's the idea. Everything I bought for this thing was either used or secondhand, etc., etc. Besides some of the important stuff, like I did get a brand new oil pump. This is a brand new ACL orbital style pump. Here, I'll show you guys the box here. Yeah, so ACL Race Series Performance oil pumps. I like these oil pumps because they have a larger gear inside. So the gears that actually drive the fluid inside of the pump here are actually larger diameter. They're thicker, they're better material gears, so they don't break as easily as like a stock oil pump. So I did get that, and then I think they also have a beefier spring in here for more oil pressure. So yeah, this thing comes with brand new O-ring for the port on the block right here, and it also comes with a new gasket for the pickup tube. And then all we have to do is just put a thin bead of RTV around the face right here. So that's what I'm going to do, and then we're going to throw it onto the block, aligning the marks on the crank with the marks on the gear so it slides right on properly how it should. And we'll just kind of make sure all this surface is clean here, which it already is. This motor was hot tanked, so there's no like residue on this thing, but we're just going to make sure, maybe go over with a razor blade just to make sure that we're going to have a good seal when we bolt it down. All right, guys, so I'm putting the rear main seal on now, and I have a fresh coat of RTV on this guy as well. And I also always put a little bit of grease or assembly lube all over the inside lip of the rear main seal so it does not tear or anything like that when you go to install it. And I feel like the grease kind of adds an extra layer of sealage. Sounds dumb, but I do it on every Honda I ever put together, and I always reuse the rear main seal because they usually don't go bad, but sometimes they do when they're improperly installed and, you know, stuff like that. That's why I always take these precautionary measures when I go to put it on. So I'm gonna put this on. I already got the oil pump installed with all the bolts there, so that's looking nice. Yeah, so next up I'm gonna throw this guy on, and then we'll put the windage tray on and the pickup tube. Alrighty, guys, so I got the windage tray. I actually had to run to my house and grab a windage tray. I did not have one here. I had a GSR windage tray and GSR pickup tube, but cannot run the GSR pickup tube and windage tray here with the LS main caps. If you were running the GSR girdle that goes over the center 3 main caps, it actually repositions where the damn pickup tube sits. So I actually just got this windage tray, an actual LS one, and then I have this pickup tube here, which this pickup tube I think was from a single cam because this mouth was way wider on the top here, and I think, like I said, I think it was from a single cam. So what I did is I just cleaned it up. This one was all full of sludge and shit before. Brake cleaned it, wire wheeled it, and then just kind of sprayed it out with brake cleaner. The screen is very clean. So we're just going to use this pickup tube. I just hope it doesn't cause issues. I don't think it's going to, but it does sit pretty close to the bottom of the pan, sitting in here like this. So yeah, like I said, it does sit kind of close to the pan. I'm running a GSR oil pan too because I don't have any LS oil pans. I only have GSR pans laying around, which I'm pretty sure you can run GSR oil pan with LS stuff, but you can't do it the other way around. You can't run GSR stuff with LS oil pan. So the GSR pan is a little bit deeper, so I think this really shouldn't be an issue. I'm just going to kind of double check some of my measurements and just make sure that I'm not going to be hitting the tube on the oil pan. That's the goal here. And like I said, it just seems weird because I don't want to run it like super close to the bottom of the pan, because if it is super close to the bottom of the pan, I feel like it could, I don't know, maybe it just wouldn't suck up oil as good. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here. I have no idea. See, I guess this is the GSR pickup tube. And if we look here, like level with the block there, they're literally the same frickin' height. So if this one was on there instead, it would be like right there. Yeah, they're like the same. So I think I'm just gonna run this pickup tube, and even though it's a little banged up, I just banged in the lip on it because the lip was like super widened out for some reason. So I did that, but yeah, I'm gonna get the new gasket on there, throw some bolts and nuts in the pickup tube, and then I can throw my oil pan on with my new Felpro oil pan gasket from Speed Factory. Alright guys, so these Felpro oil pan gaskets that you get from Speed Factory, you can also get them from the parts store. You just have to give them this exact part number, and this is the kit that is like a hardened gasket. It's a lined gasket actually. It has a metal liner in it, so when you tighten it down it doesn't push out like all the regular oil pan gaskets do. So these oil pan gaskets are well worth the money, and they never leak. So I did get one, and it comes with a little tube of RTV. So I just spread a very thin layer of RTV on the block, and I spread a very thin layer of RTV on the oil pan as well. And now that I have my oil pan all cleaned out, I'm just gonna throw this thing on. All right, moving on, guys. I got the water pipe installed with the 2 bolts that hold the thermostat housing and this whole assembly. I got my catch can breather fittings installed into the block back here. I still have to get a stud for the oil filter, which I think I have one at my house. I usually get those out. You can get these, I forget the exact size of them, but it's these nuts right here. I got them at the hardware store, and you thread them on there, 2 of them, so you can tighten them together and then back the stud out of the block. So I think I'll have to do that at my house. I think I have a block at home that has one yet. If not, I will pull one from the junkyard. So I got to get that. And I just got all the head studs installed, and I got the block deck surface cleaned off like a mirror. So this is very crucial for high boost head gasket sealing, is you want to have a freshly decked surface. And when you go to put everything on the gasket, you want to make sure that there's no debris, no oil, nothing on the deck surface, and all we can see is the cross hatching on the deck surface from where the machinist, where the machine was there to deck the block. So we did that, and then I got my dowel pins installed on this setup. It's an LSV Tech, so there's conversion dowels. So these ones go in the front on the exhaust side of the block on this corner and that corner. And then the other end goes into the head, obviously. Same thing on the head surface. You want to make sure all this is nice and clean, no debris or anything like that. So I'm going to get some brake cleaner and clean this thing off as best as I can. This cylinder head did not have the LSV Tech hole tapped in it, so I had to tap this hole right here on the intake side, closer to the sensors here in the water neck. This port has to be plugged when you're running LSV Tech. So I had to tap it and put the plug in, so that is good. This head, I don't know where I got it from, but I just had this head kind of laying around, and it did not have any valve train in it. So I got a set of Ferrera dual springs and titanium retainers and keepers. So this is all Ferrera valve springs and retainers in this cylinder head. I think I got the springs and retainers from Brandon Bass. He hooked it up on that. So we got those, and then I have a set of blocks, LMAs, that I'm going to be putting in here, which is just a mechanical spring type LMA instead of the hydraulic lifter style. So I'm getting rid of that and just going with the blocks style. And I don't know what else. ARP head studs, obviously. These have been reused, I think 7 or 8 different times in 5 or 6 different motors. I have one more set of head studs laying around. I don't ever buy new ARPs. I feel like ARP, you know, they don't really stretch, honestly. They really don't stretch, in my opinion. Sometimes maybe they do, but the gasket surfaces are way more important than reusing your head studs a couple times. The gasket surfaces are way more crucial. So we are going with a Honda OEM head gasket on this application. I like going with the OEM stuff if it's stock bore, because the OEM stuff works really good. So a lot of the aftermarket companies are actually all just OEM gaskets with, they bore them out a little bigger for like 81.5 mil or 82, etc., etc. But yeah, so this is just Honda OEM head gasket for a B16, and we're just going to plop this guy right on this way. So that's going to go down. I'm going to make sure the gasket is nice and clean too, even though it just came out of the package. This gasket and all this stuff's been sitting around for like 3 months, 4 months in the back of the coupe because I haven't had the parts to put this thing together. And now I finally have the parts. It's going together. This head also has brand new eBay stock valves. So they're just stock style valves, but they're from eBay. I think that paid like $40 for all 16 valves, intake and exhaust. And then yeah, the Ferrera springs retainers. There we go. Got the head gasket seated on there. I'm not copper spraying it. The only time I like to run copper spray is if I don't resurface the deck surface or resurface the head surface, but since both of this is resurfaced, no need for copper spray. I think it actually seals better without copper spray if both surfaces are freshly decked. Alright guys, so the cylinder head is now installed onto the motor. All the head studs are torqued to 75 foot-pounds. And I think that's where I'm going to end it for tonight, guys. I have to get my rocker assembly from my other head and install the rocker arms in this head yet. And then the LMAs, cams, cam caps, all the seals will be dialed. I'm excited. This thing's almost ready to be done, or almost ready to get a transmission and get transplanted into the purple car. So hopefully we'll get this thing installed into the car very soon. And yeah, I don't know what else I really need to do in the inside of this thing to get it ready for the motor. That'll probably be just like a day's worth of figuring out what we're gonna do. But yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. Have a great night and a better tomorrow, and we will see you later. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and yeah, peace out.